I'd like to call the regular session of the March 22nd, 2017 meeting of the Long Hill Township Committee to order. If you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Debbie, if you could call the roll, please.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Here.
Committeeman Pasorcia?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Wright?
Present. So tonight we are going to begin with a presentation on the wastewater plant and the collection system request for bids. Just to, by way of update as to what we're doing here, we've discussed at length over the last few years the possibility of selling the selling the waste treatment plant. And this year, our intention is to move the process forward to a referendum, which will take place in November. There'll be a referendum question on the ballot. So at tonight's meeting, Megan Feliciano, who is one of the attorneys working with the township on the project, is going to make a presentation summarising the discussions that were had at the Wastewater Advisory Committee last night. After that, after a discussion of the presentation, the hope is that we'll be able to give Megan the go-ahead to start to draft the request for bid document itself. That will then be brought to a meeting at the next Township Committee meeting on April 12th, where we will again discuss the final document and then authorise bids for the sale of the utility. Essentially, after April 12th, there's a number of steps that we have to take, which include bidding, advertising the bids, and then review of the bids. But we hope to have on August 18th a deadline for submission of public question to the county clerk for printing, and that has to happen by statute 81 days prior to the election. And then on November 7th, the public referendum. And if it's positive, we'll move forward with a sale of the waste treatment plant. And just to assure everybody that we are, by going down this path, we're certainly not obligating the township to any particular course of progress here. What we're doing is enabling the residents of the township to make a determination of whether they want to sell the plant in the November election, and that will be done with. There'll be a lot of information being provided by the township in order to educate all the residents on that decision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan, and I think if we pull down the screen, we should probably go and sit in the audience.
Make the screen bigger.
Slide this backwards
Yeah.
so you can see better.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Stay with the mic.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So, as Brendan mentioned, I'm going to just go through the summary of the timeline and the RFB requirements briefly. So we are in the process of putting together the draft request for bids and the draft contract. We anticipate having that completed before April 12th so that the committee has a few days to review it and to see if there's any proposed changes or and any substantive changes that we want to make to the document before submitting it to the Office of the State Controller. So as Brendan mentioned again, at the April 12th meeting, assuming the committee wants to move forward, we would pass a resolution authorizing bids for the sale of the utility. On April 13th, the following day, the bid documents needs to be submitted to the Office of the State Comptroller pursuant to a state statute. Anytime a public entity wants to go through a procurement where the value of the contract may exceed $10 million, they are required to submit all of the bid documents ahead of time to the State Controller's office at least 30 days prior to when they want to advertise. And so we've built in this 30-day review period between April 13th and May 13th. Assuming the State Controller's office approves the RFB, we would begin the advertising, the first advertisement on May 15th. And the law that we would procure this sales contract under is, we refer to it as a referendum law. It requires 6 weeks of advertisements, one per week for 6 weeks. And so we have those advertisement dates beginning on May 15th and ending on June 20th. And so around the second week or so, we would also host a optional pre-bid meeting for any of the bidders who are interested in bidding on the contract to come and ask questions and tour the facility. And that would be probably after the second week of advertisements. We'd figure out, the potential bidders by that time would be aware of the RFB. June 27th is when we have the bid submission due date scheduled for. Bidders may ask for more time. It depends really if they have enough information to put their bid together within the 6-week time frame. And from June 27th to July 5th, we would review the bids and either select the highest responsible bidder or reject all bids. So assuming the township decides to move forward with the sale, we have tentatively scheduled some special meetings in order to introduce the ordinance. The ordinance would authorize execution of the sale contract and also authorize placing the question on the November ballot for the sale of the utility. And now these dates, July 12th, July 18th, we just, there's nothing special about those dates, but there is the real date that we need to be aware of is August 18th. That is the last date that we have to submit the question to the county clerk for printing. And so July 26th is when we have the special meeting for the adoption of the ordinance. But again, that date can be changed. So from September through October, we would have public meetings regarding the sale. And on October 7th is the general election, and that's when the public referendum on the ordinance would be held. On November 24th, the clerk certifies the referendum results, and assuming the referendum passes, the contract can be executed on December 1st. And once it's executed, we would also have to submit the final contract to the State Controller's office. Between December 4th and June 1st of 2018, there's about a 6-month period or so for pre-closing conditions to be achieved. And those conditions include getting approval from the BPU of the sale and passing another municipal ordinance. It's called the municipal consent. And that really gives the gives the purchaser the authority to go, access the pipes and infrastructure. So we have a tentative closing scheduled for June of 2018. Now, going to the RFP itself, as I mentioned before, it's being procured pursuant to the referendum law. This would be a request for bids as opposed to a request for proposals. So the award would have to go to the highest responsible bidder. The RFP will include a description of the township's objectives, comprehensive description of the wastewater system. We would attach the Remington and Vernig reports that were recently prepared for the township. We'd include a description of the procurement process, the timeline, bid forms that need to be completed by each bidder, and a form of the sale contract. The RFP will also identify information that bidders will need to provide with the bid, which include the proposed purchase price, qualifications information, $20,000 bid bond, the proposed rate structure, which we anticipate requesting a 5-year binding rate structure, and then also a non-binding anticipated longer-term rate plan. But again, both the binding rate structure and the non-binding plan would be subject to BPU approval. Now, to get to what we spent time yesterday discussing with the Wastewater Advisory Committee, certain things in the sales contract that we anticipate requiring in the RFP. These are these are some of them. It's not all inclusive, but they include limiting rate increases during the first 5-year period following closing, having the purchaser pay some of the township's transaction costs. The purchaser would be required to provide and adhere to a customer service plan that includes a senior discount program. They'll have to undertake specific capital improvements, necessary to lift the sewer ban, and adhere to a schedule for implementing the capital improvements. We'd also have a provision in the contract that service to the township facilities would be at no cost to the township at the same volume levels that exist at closing. They'll also be required to pave curb to curb on streets where sewer connections are repaired or replaced. They'll create a citizens advisory panel for customer service issues. And finally, they'll be required to interview existing wastewater system staff if they're qualified for employment. So that's really it.
I think it's important to note for everybody 2 things. An RFP is in boy, okay, versus an RFP. An RFP is got flexibility. A bid, you've got no flexibility.
Exactly.
And then the other thing on the timeline, we've got 30 days built in.
You're not on mic, Neil.
Okay, I'm just only this group in here, and then I can share it later on maybe or something. Unless you want me to go up there.
So the people watching
You're
can,
going to talk a lot, you should.
I think it's important to note that 2 things. On the timeline, we built 30 days into the timeline for the Office of the State Comptroller to review the bid. 30 days is part of their regulations. Megan and Rick have seen it done in under 30 days. So we have potentially a little wiggle room in that timeline. And then the RFP is a bid. So there's no wiggle room, there's no flexibility in how we look at it, okay? Whatever is submitted is submitted. There's no different gauges of measurement on it. So I just wanted to throw that into the presentation so there's no confusion going forward, especially with the RFP as in boy.
Should we do questions at the end, or?
well, you want to come up and,
Get the screen.
his little oath formless.
So Megan, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll open it up now for any comments or questions from the committee.
Well, I'll go. Thank you, Brendan. So the first bullet point, and I don't think we're going to get into exact numbers tonight. When we say limit increases during the first 5 years, is that something we as a committee will decide? For example, we might say no increase for the first 3 years, maximum increase thereafter to year 5 of 5%. Afterwards, of course, goes to market rate.
Last night, the Wastewater Advisory Committee looked at that question, and their recommendation is to keep the increases to no more than 3% per year for the first 5 years.
And again, any increases or their rate structure in general, it's all subject to BPU approval. So we might require in the RFP that they cannot increase more than 3% per year for the first 5 years, and they might agree to it in the bid, but ultimately the BPU has the final say.
And in your experience, Megan, have those kinds of clauses met any resistance by the BPU?
Not that's my knowledge. To my knowledge, they've all been approved.
Yeah, thanks.
And if I could circle back to Neil, because it's funny, when we were sitting out there, when I saw the RFP, I immediately went to my Google search and put up RFP because I wanted to compare the two. And I know you already explained it, but I think it's, if you could explain it up here.
Sure. So an RFP, for an example, is something we do on a number of different things. For an example, okay, our janitorial service in town hall, our IT service, those are done through an RFP, and what that does, it gives you the ability to select a vendor based on a point value system that you set up based on criteria, okay, and we've done it recently with the request for redeveloper as well. So you don't necessarily have to take the lowest price. You take the vendor who meets your predetermined criteria, which you've assigned a point value to prior to meeting as a subcommittee or finance committee and determining who gets what. A bid is much like a bid we do, for an example, when we repaired the Millington Schoolhouse roof. Okay, you put a bid out, anything over the bid threshold, which is $40,000. Another example is the sludge removal at the wastewater facility. That number came in, it was a bid, it was over $40,000. We were obligated to take the low bidder. There was no judging by any subcommittee or by the township committee or by the administration. So that essentially that guy is
The lowest qualified bidder, though.
Most responsible bidder.
responsible bidder.
Sorry,
Right.
responsible bidder.
Yeah. So what we'll do in a bid situation is so for an example on the sludge removal, we'll announce the lowest bidder. We'll give Jack the paperwork. He'll review it to make sure it's the most responsible bidder.
Gotcha.
And he'll say, okay, everything checks or everything doesn't check, and then we execute the contract.
I guess,
But it's difficult to find somebody who's not a responsible bidder.
okay, and I guess in a
Pretty high bar to
situation like
prove that.
this, I mean, we're not talking about a responsible bidder for sludge removal.
Right.
We're talking about, major
Right.
Yeah,
It's a
companies
big
that
deal.
They're going to be responsible.
trade on a New York
probably.
Stock
Right.
Exchange.
That's
so-
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add, we anticipate that there are only 4 utility companies that will be qualified to bid in this.
4?
4.
Okay.
And the reason why we're doing this as an RFB as opposed to an RFP is because the statute that allows municipalities to sell their water or wastewater system requires that it
Okay.
go to that.
Well,
highest.
I could see the logic there. There's only 4 responsible as by definition.
Right.
Yeah, we would like to do it as an RFP. It gives you more flexibility. We can select on price and other factors, but unfortunately, the statute that allows us to do this requires the RFP process.
We have to bid most things unless they're under the bid threshold
Right.
or unless they're an exception like professional services. In those cases, you can do RFPs, but in the public
Gotcha.
context, almost everything has to be a formal bid.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Matt, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Megan.
Megan, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, if we go to the committee liaison reports, I'll start with Guy.
Brendan?
I mean, we've got a short enough agenda. I was going to keep that to the end, unless it was something, unless it was a question specifically for Megan.
Megan plans on staying around.
Oh, you're going to stay? Yeah, Megan's going to stay. So we've got a fairly quick agenda, Dennis.
Let's keep it that way.
I'm curious why the restrictions that we're placing having to do with rates and reemployment and paving and those situations are on a slide that's entitled contract requirements, but they were not listed under bid requirements. So are these late starters that we're going to spring on him after we get the bids in, and then we're going to write a...
No, that's everything that we mentioned here is going to be part of the bid, and that sounds like a legal question, so I'll turn it over to you, Megan, to answer.
Just to clarify, the draft contract, the form of contract will be attached to the RFP. So all of these requirements that were listed on that slide, they will all be in the RFP from the very beginning.
Thanks, Megan. So I'll continue with the committee liaison reports and start with you, Guy.
All right, mine's about an hour long, so buckle.
Yeah, there we go.
What's new?
Buckle in for safety. No, I'm joking. OEM Director Shane Daly asked to point out to the employees of the town and the Township Committee that they are offering a CPR and AED certifications this year, and employees are strongly encouraged to do so if they can.
And that's April 19th?
You probably, no, I don't think so. I have, there are 4 dates.
No, it's April 19th.
Well, there's CPR, ED, and stuff like that and all that? Okay. And that's it. I mean, I don't know if anybody else was going to mention it, but we learned this week, for example, there might have been some hydrants that are missed. In general, the public, if you ever notice something, please report it to town. We can't know everything.
Yeah.
So, for example, if there's an issue in an area, gas smell keeps coming up, I think, chronically. I don't know why that is, by the way. Maybe you do. No, you don't. Okay. But anything you notice, please point it out. You know, if a hydrant's missed, you got to tell people because it's a safety issue.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, on the hydrants, thank you to the Sterling Fire Department. They cleared over 300 hydrants on Tuesday alone. I don't know if they went back on Wednesday, but you probably didn't even realize the town has that many hydrants. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for doing that. And as to the snow removal, I know there were a lot of complaints. Facebook blew up on Tuesday, as usual. And there were other complaints about Valley Road and parts of Long Hill Road. Just so the public knows, Valley Road is a county road, and the county is responsible for plowing it. And what happens is the county contracts out a subcontractor to do the work, as they do for parts of Long Hill Road, if not all of it. And I, like everybody else, went on Valley Road Wednesday and wondered what was going on. It turns out, after the DPW investigated it a little bit, it turns out that the plowing contractor didn't lower the plows and scrape all the way to the blacktop on the road. Therefore, that's why there was about an inch thick level of ice on top of the road, and it wasn't our DPW, it was the county DPW. Mr. Greeny's already contacted them. He contacted them Wednesday, I believe, and was on the phone with them. I think he's even had a meeting with the county since then. Hopefully we don't get any snow again this year, and hopefully that rectifies the problem for next year. Because if they keep doing that, hopefully they don't get the contract back, because it's unacceptable. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
The new employee?
Yeah, I thought there was a new employee potentially.
Oh, I don't know, I deleted that by accident.
Oh, he's
Yeah, I deleted that.
So, moving on then to the consent agenda resolutions, and Debbie, I believe you have a couple of administrative changes.
Yeah, I just have 2 corrections I'd like to make to Resolution 105. I just to correct the spelling of Cantor in the title. I have it correct in the base. I don't know why. And then on 17106, the correct date for the PBA fundraising event is April 1st of this year. not the October.
Wasn't there one other thing, Neil? that
Yeah, there was
the
one
amount
on
in
the
104?
change order for 104, and I neglected to pull that out of the file to double-check that number. Deputy Mayor, I can run and check that, see if I have that. Do you have the backup to that, Deb, by chance?
Wait, hold on.
Because somebody crafted a resolution.
What's the difference between 156,024.70 and 163,864.23?
I will have those, hold on. Oh, the 7 on the 2?
On the fire
Yeah,
block,
the second, there's a number missing.
Yes, there is. 9524 and... 512.
Here, see, there's just a typo. There's
7839.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
783953,
saying
Deb?
it, I didn't see it.
Yeah, no, it's kind of thinking.
Deb, 53? It's changed?
783953, yes.
Yeah, that was the one change on that, Jack.
Okay, so we have the 3 amendments to that,
Yeah,
to
those
the
are all
consent
amended.
agenda.
That's amended.
So
Oh,
if,
Mr. Deputy Mayor, also on 17107,
Oh, crud.
I had put a call into the redeveloper. This was a resolution on ongoing discussions with Elite Properties. And at our last meeting, we had talked about putting together a resolution that would authorize the redevelopment subcommittee to go out and start to discuss a developer's agreement with Elite. Jack was kind enough to draft this. I was trying to confirm with Elite up until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, the precise escrow amount that they wanted listed in the resolution. Right now, we showed $10,000. That was a number that came from a resolution they had provided to us from Fanwood. I don't know if Jack, we had talked earlier about perhaps tabling this.
We should probably pull it. We don't have that.
Yeah, and like I said, I've put a couple of calls into them, and I didn't hear back, so
Numbers that 07.
we probably want to pull that one
There's the add-on.
from the consent.
So that's 107, okay.
Okay, so,
So move with the 3...
all right, so I'd like to move Resolution 17-096 through 17-06 with the 3 amendments as stated.
And removing 107, right?
Yeah, I didn't even...
You said 3
Yeah.
cents.
Right.
Okay. And Matt, who's seconding?
I'll second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Patricia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
yes. So moving on then to the ordinances. An ordinance for the approval of the first reading is ordinance number -397-17, an ordinance increasing escrow deposit for completeness review and amending section 180 of the Township Land Use Ordinance entitled Applications, Fees, Escrow Deposits, Guarantees, Development Fees and Improvements. This is part of an effort that's been directed to improving the processes in our land use, and just for clarification, we're not increasing the amount of the escrow here. We're actually just moving the numbers around, and we're doing that in order to really protect the township. We're moving part of the escrow fee up to the beginning of the application for the completeness review. So, are there any questions?
Is this, who recommended increasing the escrow?
This was part of our land use efficiency process committee. We're really doing it at the urging of Planning and Zoning Coordinator Nancy Probst.
Okay, so Nancy endorsed this?
Correct.
All right, my only concern is, you give those two 675, they're going to spend 675. You authorize 1,800, they're going to take 1,800. And is it because people have to keep replenishing their escrows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And it only leads to needless kind
More
of delays.
Oh, okay, but do the
Yeah.
other two understand, just because there's 1,800 there, doesn't mean they have to take it all? Make that clear to them, please.
Yeah,
We'll make a note of that.
I think they're aware of that.
That's my only concern.
All right, thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
So I'll entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 397-17?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Searchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
All in favor.
The next ordinance is 398-17, and it's an ordinance vacating a portion of Mercer Street. Now, we discussed this at the last meeting, and I think there was only really one question that we had regarding it, and that was did it affect the trail network that's been proposed for the town. We are introducing it tonight. I don't know if we have an answer to
I
that.
was able to get a hold of the volunteer deputy mayor, and he had not had a chance to go out and take a look at it. And in the line of what we talked about earlier, this is an intro, and so we have several weeks before we hear it publicly. He'll try to go out and get a confirmation, but we both suspected it did not interfere with the trail network.
Okay.
But he'll
I drive
confirm
past
that
there,
out.
God knows how many times, that million times probably, and it's not going to interfere with anything.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's my
I don't know where the
feeling.
trail's going, but I highly doubt the trail's going to be
The
there.
planning board is also going to look at it. I saw in correspondence today, which is a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jack, I didn't catch that.
The planning board is going to take a look at it as well.
Okay,
I saw
So,
in correspondence today, which is a good idea.
okay.
Do they have a timeline on that?
By our adoption.
Oh,
yeah. We will introduce this tonight, and it will be advertised for second reading and scheduled for April 26, 2017.
And I think the Township Committee and the Planning Board are back on normal schedules come April, right? So
Yeah.
there's more than enough time.
Yeah, that's
for the
right.
Planning Board to...
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to introduce ordinance 398-17, first reading.
I'll second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Searchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is a second reading for its adoption of ordinance number 394-17, an ordinance amending various sections of the Township land use ordinances as recommended by the Planning Board. And this again is the result of a lot of discussion at the Planning Board, and I think back and forth with this committee. We have come up with this. There's one question that I think that we were asked today, and I'll answer it. And it goes to the page 16 of the agenda under section 6, and it's section 182 entitled fee and escrow deposits. And the fee and escrow deposits are the application fee is used to pay for the township employees as they process an application, and the escrow deposits are really to cover the costs of the professionals. And so the question was asked is why were we actually reducing the amounts of the escrow deposits here in A, B, and C, and basically it was as the discussion through over the course of the time at the planning board, these were potentially multiple variances that were being asked for, and whenever the professionals looked at it, there was really not that much more time to look at one versus several, and so the best course of action was to reduce the number, and that's what's reflected here in the ordinance. So with that, I'll open it up for comment by the committee. No, I'll open it up to the public for comment. Seeing no comment, I'll close the public part of the discussion, and I'll call for a motion to adopt ordinance number 394-17.
So moved.
A second?
Oh, second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Searchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes. So that brings us to brings
18,
us-
the bottom.
yeah, yep. That brings us to our discussion items, and the first discussion item is the idea of live streaming meetings on Facebook, and I know how much, Matt, you like Facebook, so
No, I
you
don't,
want to want to talk about this?
No, I read about it in that municipal, whatever, magazine we get free all the time.
New Jersey League of Municipalities.
Yeah, New Jersey League of Municipalities magazine. And I saw in Union Township, they were live streaming their meetings on Facebook because I guess they, not to disturb it, but they realized that most of the people in town get their information on Facebook, good or bad, that's where people go. So what they did was they set it up through, they have like Union Township Television, and they have a person, just like we have Dennis, that handles their AV stuff. I think the limitation was they can only do it for an hour and a half, as some kind of limit. I don't know what the requirements are for equipment and things, but they were live streaming the meetings on Facebook as well as having them on the television station to hit a larger audience. Like I said, I don't know if it's feasible. I know nothing about Facebook, but it's something you might want to look into.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Matt. Everybody seems to, go preferentially to Facebook these days, and certainly the live streaming thing seems to have have some following.
Brendan, if I can follow up on that, I happened to be meeting with representatives from a couple of other towns earlier today, and they mentioned something. There's a product, I don't know what the right thing to say is, there's a product where you can actually, if you want to use Facebook, Twitter, whatever else, whatever medium is out there, you put it into one thing, and it splits itself out. So you don't have to repeat it 5 different times.
Right. Technical.
Well,
right. The thing is...
that thing.
That's a technical...
It's actually called the thing. You would find that surprising. You would think people would confuse it with the other thing.
Yeah,
no, it's this thing.
That's the thing.
So whatever the product's called, for the purpose of the minutes of this meeting, it's the thing. You can put it into the thing, and it actually goes out to all the other mediums that you may want to use,
It's like a
whether it's Twitter, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
no. What did you say it was?
Distribution point?
Yeah, it goes in one place and then they separate it from there.
They send it.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can always send it to the CAC. I mean, they
Yeah,
can
I mean,
look at it.
maybe that's something that we do.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to
We could,
suggest.
I think there's a meeting tomorrow, is that
Meeting
right?
tomorrow. Hopefully, everybody will remember and show up. Well, Dennis, we can put that on the list of things to talk about.
You just,
Oh, maybe, you get more than 3 people there. We could get the township committee right there.
if they know they're going to discuss the thing, I think you'll get droves.
Yes, there should be a lot of people there for that. So we'll put it on tomorrow for CAG.
I'm sure Neil will bring it to the meeting.
Yeah.
I will bring it.
26 items on the agenda already.
We'll make this number 1.
This
I
is-
meant number 2 after the telephone conversation.
Okay, great. So, maybe we can have an update and from CAC at the next
Sure, yep.
at the next meeting. Okay, thanks. Old business? Any old business? New business? I think we'll talk about, I'll put this under new business, but it kind of dovetails with one of the announcements. Towards the end of last year, a representative from PRISM came to the chambers here and asked if PRISM could be given access to a public a place, and he mentioned a firehouse or a community centre in order to hold an informational meeting for the township in regard to the proposed development at the Tifa site in Millington. We put the representative in touch with the Millington Fire Company, and it was proposed that there would be a meeting on April 19th at Millington Fire Company. I've since heard from various residents that perhaps the town hall here would be a better venue for that meeting, since we could potentially live stream it to or record it and in that way show it to the entire township, not just the people who are here. Actually, I don't think there would be a problem necessarily with the committee in having it here. Matt, do you see any
No,
Do you have any
actually,
objections?
I asked a couple people in the public about it, and they thought it would be good to have it here just for the mere fact of the television audience. So everybody in town can see it, especially for people that can't get to the meeting, they can watch it on a replay, or if they're elderly or just can't get out. And I think it'd be better to have it here just because it's a bigger, well, Mr. Sandow's question, but I think it's a larger room, it's already set up for a meeting, and if we can live stream it or put on the television, but I'm sure Mr. Sandow has a comment on that, but.
I mean, Guy, you have any?
No, and PRISM has no problem with that either, right?
Well, here, I mean, this might short circuit your question, Dennis. I talked to the PRISM representative, and I said, you know, that we were going to discuss having the holding the meeting here, and wanted to get his thoughts on that before we go ahead. Basically, the format of the meeting he thought was not conducive to this particular venue here. It's going to be more of a house, like a
Open house.
Formal.
open house. Yeah, it's going to be like an informal open house type of meeting where there'll be a very short presentation by the PRISM group, and then they're going to have stations where there'll be, you know, for example, a planner, an engineer, traffic expert, and the meeting will start at 7:30. But the idea is that you don't have to be there at 7:30 in order to participate. It's going to be one of these kind of things where people can drop in if they have specific questions for certain professionals. They can access the professionals there. It's a format that PRISM has, I'm told, has been, you know, used for better or worse on a number of different projects. And so I think what we can go back to PRISM is, you know, after tonight's discussion, is to say, yeah, the firehouse is available, as is Town Hall. What do you think what would you prefer? I think they're going to, based on the discussions, they're going to keep it at the Millington Firehouse.
And Jack, correct us if I'm wrong, this is not a formal or anything legally required.
Not at all.
No.
I'd be inclined to say
Yeah, it's their choice.
their choice.
Because
Exactly
it's
right. Yes.
just to be clear, you know, this is a PRISM meeting. It was requested by PRISM as part of what they do whenever they're looking to start up a new development in order to get you know, contacts with the community and community outreach. So you know, that's why it's their meeting. I'll let them run it whichever way
Right,
they want.
And if this proceeds, let's be clear, this does not preclude the formal hearings for public input, et cetera.
Exactly.
That would ultimately take place here.
Yeah, there'll
Yeah,
be hearings.
we have to
here.
have those statutory.
Right, so I think at this stage, I would suggest we follow your recommendation, whatever they prefer.
Yeah. So.
It's their show, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have my preferences, but I'm not running the show, so I prefer.
Okay. So if we go to the announcements, again, PRISM TIFA Property Informational Meeting will be held at Millington Volunteer Firehouse at 1891 Long Hill Road on April 19th, and it will start at 7:30, and as I say, it's going to be a kind of drop-in type of meeting, and so if you know, you're encouraged to be there at 7:30, but certainly if you come later, you'll still have access to professionals and information. Moving on, the Traffic Advisory Committee will meet on April 3rd. Here in Town Hall, and the meeting will start at 1:30 p.m. In the large conference room here, and the one topic for discussion will be the possibility of closing Oaks Road, and I know I've had some emails on that topic. It was a hot topic a few meetings ago, so this will be the meeting where residents can come and express their views for or against doing something on Oaks Road. On March 29th, at the Bernards Town Hall on 1 Collier Lane, Baskin Ridge, there will be a very important presentation on curing colorectal cancer, in particular the early detection and screening. An expert medical team will present a comprehensive review of colorectal cancer, the risk factors, the warning signs and symptoms, and importantly recommendations for early detection and prevention. It's free, it's open to all at 6:30 p.m. for refreshments, and then the programme gets underway at 7 p.m. and I think we'll have this on our on the web page.
I think it's already
Yeah.
on there.
Oh, so it's on the web page for the I will give the reservation information. That's on the web page. On March 29th, here at Town Hall, starting at 7 p.m. and going until 9 p.m., we will have the opiate presentation. It will be given by Brad Seabury. He's the Chief Assistant Morris County Prosecutor. And we've discussed that. I think it was Committee Member Saoirse who's really spearheaded this, and thanks to him for making this happen. The last announcement that I have, I'm keeping the best for last maybe, is April 29th. There's going to be a comedy night at the Millington Volunteer Firehouse. It's going to be a great night. If last year is any anything to go by, so. We all get lots of bad news on the news these days and everything. So this is definitely some respite.
So, Deputy Mayor Ray, on that evening, will you wear a more flamboyant jacket than you have tonight? No promises.
No promises. So the tickets are available in advance, but they're certainly they'll be on sale on the night starting at 7:30, and that's it for the announcements I have. Any announcements? Any other announcements? So with that, I'll open up the meeting to the public for remarks and statements pertaining to any matter.
With regard to the PRISM presentation, wherever it may be, I don't believe that meeting is open to all residents. The PRISM matter has come before the Township Committee and it has come before the Planning Board. And I expect that PRISM will be introducing a new concept, new answers to new questions. That's what they were sent off to do. Because of that, I don't believe that more than 2 members of the Township Committee and more than 4 members of the Planning Board are allowed to attend. And Jack, this is a question for you.
Well, certainly not at the same time.
Well, there's only one. There's
Well,
only one presentation.
No, they're going to have an open house kind of.
Dennis, it's an open house type of idea where there'll be perhaps an introductory presentation, but the real meat of the night is going to be the various experts are going to have their own.
Whatever their
own stand.
Whatever their open presentation is can't be viewed by all members of the Township Committee and all members of the Planning Board at the same time.
In fact, Dennis, I think it's probably a good idea if members of the Township Committee and Planning Board don't go to it because it's outside the normal channels of things.
In that case, the public will know more about their new plan than the Planning Board will.
Until they come to the Planning Board with a formal plan. You know, I defer to Mr. Bernstein, but you know, the Planning Board has to be careful of going outside the record. So it's probably, in my opinion, it's probably a good idea of neither body that attends this open.
Given that the Planning Board has a chore now that was assigned to it to create new ordinances to accommodate the redevelopment of that site, and given the fact that PRISM is going to make a presentation to the public that the Planning Board can't see, this sounds like putting the cart before the horse. Because we have not asked PRISM to make an additional formal presentation to either of those bodies. We've only directed the Planning Board to create an ordinance.
Dennis, I haven't heard of any new plan or anything else that's going on down there, but I think Prism came to us. They want to make a presentation to the public to explain what they intend to do or what they're thinking of doing down there, and gather input from the public. Yeah. And so they will be present at the Millington Volunteer Fire Company from 7:30 onwards on April 19th. And I think it's the way it's been explained to me. It's a good forum because it really is a direct interaction between their experts and the public, and it's a good two-way exchange there. And so I take Jack's lead that probably the members of the Township Committee and the Planning Board probably shouldn't attend.
Yeah, you always have the opportunity to ask them to come in and make a public presentation. I'm just hesitant to have Township Committee and Planning Board people there off the record.
Yeah.
I do think that would be appropriate because, I often say that the Township Committee and the Planning Board are taking action without really understanding the facts, and now we're putting those boards in a situation where the public will know more about the presentation before the official bodies do, and it just seems like we got the timing all backward here.
But Dennis, it strikes me as similar to an applicant going around the neighborhood and explaining to the neighbors what their application is going to be before they appear before the board.
Yes, but at this point, we're long before an application. We're still at the stage where the Planning Board has been directed to create an ordinance that would facilitate something, and we don't know we can't go to the meeting to find out what that something is.
I defer totally to you on the Planning Board and Dan Bernstein and the other people as to how the Planning Board response to this, whether, if you all decide to attend and Dan gives the imprimatur, that's fine with me. But I just think from the Township Committee standpoint, if in fact there's new information and the Township Committee is interested, we should invite them here to a public meeting and have them do it here on TV.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a private company that would like to meet with residents of Long Hill.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
we're doing, and we don't even have to help facilitate the location. Do we have any grounds to stop them from doing it anyway?
No. In fact, it's the fire companies. They own their building.
Yeah.
Not a township building.
The only whatever is the fact that you're a member of the Millington Fire Company, but neither here nor there. He's not representing the Millington.
I wouldn't even be in the country that night, so.
I would certainly suggest that you not attend that.
The law cut up again, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
I'm just reticent to read a headline in the newspaper that exposes a whole lot of things that were said, questions that were asked, answers that were given, and the official bodies have no prior knowledge because they weren't allowed to go. It just troubles me. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
You're allowed to go. It's just my recommendation that you not go.
Well, is somebody going to be standing at the door counting to see?
No, I'm not.
Thanks, Dennis.
They could put an ad in the paper too ahead of time.
They are actually doing that. They're putting an ad.
Is that right?
I forgot to mention that there'll be an ad in the Echoes publicising it.
Well, I meant they could put information in it before they bring it to the Township Committee.
Right. Yeah. So if there are no more comments from the public, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:27.
Second.
All in favour?
Aye. Look at you.